Hey guys, thank you for joining me in another video. In this video, I'm going to talk about a game between Sakhev and Lavrik. And this game highlights the importance of getting your king to safety early on in the game. And if you don't get your king to safety, you will see in this game how you can come under a lot of pressure. So white started with d4, d5. We have this Slav defense setup, e3, a6, knight to c3, b5. And this is the first interesting move made by Black. He spent 4 out of the first 5 moves of the game moving pawns. He's blocked off any squares for his knight unless, he has ideas of knight to d7, which would, of course, block in this light squared bishop even more. Black can't really put his bishop on the, desirable b7 outpost anymore because of all these pawns put on light squares. And then also in the process, White's created a lot of weaknesses on dark squares around his queenside. So, perhaps instead of b5, Black could have considered bishop to f5. Putting that knight on the outpost in the center is not easily pushed back by f6. Immediately challenging with knight b to d7. Queen to b3, attacking the b7 pawn. Queen c7 defending. C takes d5. Knight takes e5. D takes e5. Knight takes d5, knight takes d5, c takes d5, and then developing the bishop, preparing to swing this rook over to this open c file and kick this queen back. e6, this would commit the light squared bishop to the attack and also give some space for developing the dark squared bishop. Rook to c1, taking control of the c file. Queen retreats, bishop to e2, preparing to castle, and then bishop to e7, castle, castle. And this position is, by the slimmest of margins, better for Black, but there's chances for both sides. In the game, however, Black played b5 on move 5, and White replied b3, supporting his queenside pawns. Bishop to g4, pinning the knight. Bishop to d2, e6, committing the light squared bishop outside this pawn chain that we have here. h3 to take or not to take. If you take, you immediately relieve the tension created by this pin. There's my dog back there. If you retreat, you could easily get pushed back even more. Maybe that wouldn't be the strongest plan long term. For White, because that kind of weakens the pawn structures around his king if he had ideas of castling kingside. But in the game, after h3, bishop took on f3, queen takes on f3, and Black's not really hurting for this light squared bishop anyway. With all the pawns on light squares that you have now, that light squared bishop really wasn't doing much. Knight b to d7, developing another piece. Bishop to d3, attacking the knight. With bishop to b4, castling, getting the king ready to move him to a safe area, and then preparing an attack. And then queen to e7. And so this is the first this is not the first, but another one of a perhaps dubious move made by Black. Maybe he gives some flexibility on which direction he wants to castle, but with all these pawns pushed so far forward on his queenside, castling queenside maybe is kind of dangerous, especially if White decides to, with all these arrows, open up some files here with some pawn breaks. So of course there's really only one option for Black in this position if you were to castle. That's if you were to castle. C takes on d5, C takes on d5, a4, and we see that White has this idea of contesting for this a file. B takes on a4, rook takes on a4. Going back real quick, better for Black, instead of immediately b takes on a4, bishop takes on c3, bishop takes on c3, and then pushing b4. And of course this pawn is defended by this queen, and White has to move his bishop to safety. And for the time being, any pawn advances are halted by this annoying b4 pawn and this dark square bishop is slightly blunted. I mean, there's not really anywhere for him to go. All of his pawns over here on dark squares, and he can't move anywhere else right now. So that might be a little bit cramped for white. End the game after b takes on a4, rook takes on a4, and so to defend the bishop, to take the knight, what should black do? White has clear intentions of doubling up on the a file, and if he's able to do that, then the a file is his for sure. A5. Looking to keep this file closed, but this is actually a pretty big positional mistake on black's part. White can't immediately just capture this bishop because, of course, the queen is defending it. The best move in this position for black would have just been to get his his king to safety by just castling kingside. And if he were to castle kingside, maybe we'd have a game that went like this. Bishop takes on a6, attacking the rook. Rook to a2, moving to safety. Recruiting his relatively passive rook on f8 to b8, and then rook to f to a1. And so now he's doubled up on this a file. It's pretty much the white's at this point. And white's has an edge here, but with some skillful play by black, it perhaps is still playable for both sides. In the game, though, black pushed a5, attempting to clamp down on his a file, and black played a pretty or white played a really surprising move. And if you want to take a time to pause right now to see if you can find the move yourself, feel free to do that. If you found knight takes on d5, then you were correct, because now e takes on d5, bishop takes on b4. This pawn is pinned, so the pawn can't recapture. And if black had castled sooner, these rooks would be connected, and then black could immediately recapture the bishop on b4. But because black chose not to castle, he's finding himself in a little bit of trouble here. The best move actually is queen takes b4, rook takes b4, a takes b4, and you're giving up your queen for a rook and a bishop, so it's as though you're only down one pawn. But in reality, if you turn on the engine, white is actually having a crushing attack going. White's king is safer. Of course, he has the queen, and he can easily activate all of his pieces for a crushing attack. So in the game, though, black moves his queen to safety. Of course, rook f to a1, queen to b6, supporting this a pawn that's really coming under a lot of pressure. Queen to d1. Black's also x-ray attacking this b pawn, but that really doesn't matter for much right now. Black's finding himself under a lot of pressure, and taking a pawn really won't accomplish much. Rook to d8, pretty much conceding control of the a file to black, or to white. Taking the pawn, of course. Queen takes on b3. Not really anything else to do for black here. Bishop to c2 attacking. Queen to b7. Rook to b1. Moving the queen to safety. Rooks are exchanged. And basically, black's whole queen side has just been blown open. And with these bishops, with all these open lines here, these bishops are just deadly. Bishop to b4, solidifying black's centralized king. There's not really any easy way for black to castle here. And actually black resigned in this position. And rightfully so, because he knows that he's being absolutely destroyed. But the game may have continued as follows. After bishop to b4, knight to c6, bishop to c5, just solidifying his bishop in front of his pawn chain. Knight to d7, but then pinning the knight so that the knight doesn't have any ideas of capturing this bishop, and then castling. Queen to c7, unpinning. Check. Knight to d8, and black's finding himself very, very cramped and stuck in the center, both of which are very, very undesirable. Queen to a4, bringing the queen into the battle. h6, really all moves are losing at this point. There's black's pieces are just so tied down. None of these knights can move. This queen doesn't really have a lot of reasonable squares to go, so all moves are losing for black. So let's just play a random move, the h6, attacking the queen, blocking, about to lose the knight. Maybe just attack the bishop, see what you can do. Lose the knight, moving the queen to safety, and the game will end pretty soon after bishop takes on d7, moving the king out of check. And then there's checkmate in 2. Queen to b6, queen c7, queen takes c6, checkmate. So in this game, I hope that you have seen the importance of moving your king to safety as soon as you can in the game, and the dangers that can come from having a king that has been centralized for too long. If you like to learn about attacks, then I hope that you have found useful tactics when it comes to creating a position that will keep your opponent from moving his king to safety and keeping the king in the dangerous center. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, I wish you good luck with your chess, and bye for now.